Is Robert De Niro a cinematic genius or a polarizing figure? The answer might shock you. What I'm about to tell you about one of Hollywood's most revered actors was never meant to be public knowledge. The carefully crafted image you've been fed for decades. It's about to crumble before your eyes. Between you and me, there's a reason why certain Hollywood insiders refuse to work with the man they call the Beast of the Bronx. My industry source revealed to me that behind those iconic performances lies a truth so explosive that publicists have worked overtime to keep it buried. Today, that all changes. You think you know Robert De Niro? Think again. The story I'm about to share comes directly from those who have witnessed his rise to power and the casualties left in his wake. They don't want this getting out, but after decades of silence, the truth is finally being exposed. Robert De Niro was born in Manhattan in 1943, but his origin story isn't what you've been told. What the tabloids don't know is that young De Niro's early life was marked by a devastating family secret that would shape his entire persona. My source, who grew up in the same neighborhood, revealed that De Niro's father, an acclaimed abstract expressionist painter, lived a double life that would later become the blueprint for his son's most haunting performances. The pain of this discovery is what truly birthed the intensity we see on screen. But that's just the beginning. De Niro's meteoric rise wasn't simply the result of raw talent. An executive who worked at Paramount during the early 70s told me something that changes everything we thought we knew about how De Niro landed his breakout roles. According to this insider, there was a shadow figure, a power player whose name still strikes fear in Hollywood circles, who saw something in De Niro that went beyond acting ability. Something darker. Something he could use. What happened next would alter the course of cinema history. The truth about De Niro's preparation for Taxi Driver goes far beyond the method acting mythology you've heard. My source, who worked as an assistant on set, witnessed behavior so disturbing that several crew members threatened to quit. There were moments, my source whispered, when none of us knew if we were talking to Travis Bickle or Robert De Niro. The line had completely disappeared, the techniques he employed to transform into that character were never fully disclosed to the public for one terrifying reason. Between you and me, Martin Scorsese himself was reportedly so unnerved by what he saw that he considered halting production. The footage that ended up on the cutting room floor. It would change how you view that performance forever. But that's nothing compared to what happened during the filming of Raging Bull. The physical transformation that won De Niro his second Oscar has become Hollywood legend. Gaining 60 pounds to portray the older Jake, LaMotta is celebrated as the ultimate commitment to craft. What they've been hiding, however, is the psychological toll this metamorphosis took, not just on De Niro, but on everyone around him. A production assistant who worked closely with De Niro during this period recently broke their silence, revealing to me that the weight gain was just a smokescreen for something far more sinister happening behind the scenes. The real story involves a pact between De Niro and a method acting coach whose techniques were so controversial they've since been banned from major studios. The exercises they performed in private would make your blood run cold. 3 crew members reportedly quit after witnessing one particularly disturbing training session. What I saw wasn't acting anymore, one of them told me in confidence. It was like watching someone willingly fracture their own psyche. The aftermath of Raging Bull created the first major rift between De Niro and Scorsese, a conflict that remained hidden from the public for years. My industry source revealed that their legendary partnership nearly ended permanently after Scorsese discovered what De Niro had been doing to access the darkest corners of LaMotta's personality. But Hollywood's elite closed ranks to protect one of their own. The story was buried, agreements were signed, and their collaboration continued, albeit with new boundaries firmly in place. The 1980s marked a turning point in De Niro's career and personal life. What the world saw was an actor expanding his range with films like The King of Comedy and Once Upon a Time in America. What remained hidden was the toll his immersive approach was taking on his relationships. A former assistant who worked in De Niro's household during this period recently reached out to me with information that reframes everything we thought we knew about the actor's private world. According to this source, De Niro's home life was governed by strict rules that bordered on obsessive. There were rooms in his house no one was allowed to enter, my source revealed. Not staff, not friends, not even family. What these rooms contained has been the subject of intense speculation among those closest to him. Between you and me, the contents of these private spaces would explain the inexplicable shifts in De Niro's personality that directors have whispered about for years. But that's just scratching the surface. The truth about De Niro's business ventures, particularly the Tribeca empire, contains revelations that powerful people have worked tirelessly to suppress. My source, who was involved in the early days of the Tribeca Film Festival, shared documents showing that the festival's origin story has been carefully sanitized for public consumption. The real motivation behind creating one of New York's most celebrated cultural institutions wasn't nearly as altruistic as we've been led to believe. The aftermath of 9/11 provided the perfect cover for a venture that solved multiple problems for De Niro, problems that threatened to expose aspects of his life that would shatter his carefully constructed public image. The real estate holdings, the restaurants, the film center, they formed a perfect smokescreen for activities that my source described as raising serious ethical questions. They don't want this getting out, but 3 separate individuals who worked within De Niro's business organization have confirmed these allegations independently. What connects these testimonies is a pattern of behavior that shows a different side to the man celebrated as American cinema's conscience. De Niro's political activism, which has made headlines in recent years, has deeper roots than most realize. A former associate with direct knowledge of De Niro's private conversations told me that his outspoken political stance wasn't the spontaneous outgrowth of genuine concern that it appeared to be. According to this insider, De Niro's entry into political discourse was calculated long before he became the face of resistance. The strategy behind this transformation was mapped out in meetings with individuals whose names would shock even the most jaded Hollywood observers. Between you and me, there's a reason why certain topics make De Niro visibly uncomfortable during interviews. The questions he refuses to answer would lead directly to the truth he's worked decades to conceal. But perhaps the most revealing chapter in De Niro's story concerns his relationships with younger actors. The public narrative portrays him as a mentor, a living link to cinema's golden age. My source, who worked on several films where De Niro shared the screen with emerging talent, paints a vastly different picture. There's a reason why certain actors never work with him twice. This insider revealed to me what happens when the cameras stop rolling. contradicts everything you think you know about who Robert De Niro really is. The truth, finally exposed, is that De Niro's approach to his younger colleagues follows a disturbing pattern that multiple sources have independently confirmed. The testing, the psychological games, the calculated undermining, all disguised as old-school technique, has left lasting damage on actors who entered his orbit expecting mentorship and instead found something far more troubling. Leonardo DiCaprio, who worked with De Niro early in his career, reportedly has private conversations about this experience that differ dramatically from his public statements. What DiCaprio witnessed during their time together changed his own approach to acting in ways he's never fully acknowledged. The allegations extend to De Niro's relationship with directors as well. My source, who worked closely with a filmmaker who collaborated with De Niro in the 2000s, described power struggles so intense that entire scenes had to be rewritten to accommodate De Niro's refusal to comply with the original vision. It wasn't artistic disagreement, my source insisted. It was about control, about establishing dominance. And it happened on every single project. What the tabloids don't know is that several directors have maintained public admiration for De Niro while privately vowing never to work with him again. The reasons for this disconnect would redefine how film historians view some of this century's most acclaimed performances. Between you and me, there's a document circulating among certain production companies, a list of special requirements for working with De Niro that goes far beyond the typical demands of an A-list star. The contents of this writer reveal insecurities and compulsions that the public image of Robert De Niro works diligently to mask. But perhaps the most shocking revelation concerns De Niro's health struggles and how they've been concealed from the public. My industry source, who has connections to medical professionals who have treated high-profile clients, shared information about a diagnosis that De Niro received over a decade ago, a condition that explains certain behavioral patterns that have been misinterpreted as mere eccentricity or artistic temperament. This medical reality, which remains one of Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets, casts his later career choices in an entirely new light. The real reason behind his shift to comedic roles wasn't the artistic pivot or financial motivation that the press speculated about. They don't want this getting out, but there's evidence suggesting that De Niro's representatives have gone to extraordinary lengths to keep this information private, including legal arrangements with media outlets that extend far beyond standard confidentiality agreements. What these documents contain would fundamentally change public perception of his legacy. Now that you know the truth about Robert De Niro, the man behind the legend, you might be wondering what happens next. How do we reconcile the undeniable genius of his performances with the troubling reality of the man who created them? Is it possible to separate the art from the artist when the boundary between the two has been deliberately blurred for decades? The answer isn't simple, and that's precisely why this conversation matters. Robert De Niro isn't just an actor. He's a symbol of American artistic integrity, a cultural touchstone whose influence extends far beyond cinema. The question of whether he's a genius or a controversial icon isn't an either-or proposition. The most uncomfortable truth is that he's both, simultaneously, inseparably. Between you and me, there's one final piece to this puzzle that I've saved until now. A revelation so significant that even those closest to De Niro don't have full knowledge of its implications. My source, who has tracked this information for years, provided evidence of a project De Niro has been developing in secret, one that promises to address, directly and without compromise, the very contradictions we've explored today. If what I've learned is accurate, Robert De Niro is preparing to do something unprecedented, something that will either cement his legacy or destroy it completely. The details of this final act could redefine everything we thought we knew about one of cinema's most enigmatic figures. But that story will have to wait for next time. If you want to know what Robert De Niro is planning, the project that insiders are calling his most dangerous role yet, you'll need to subscribe now. The truth he's finally ready to share after decades of calculated silence isn't just shocking, it's transformative. And those who hear it first will understand Hollywood's past, present, and future in ways others never will. The legend, the controversy, the man himself, this is just the beginning of the real Robert De Niro story. And trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Estimated duration, 8.3 minutes.